The cantina on Trelia Station buzzed with the usual mixture of voices speaking in dozens of languages. Blue-skinned Altarians sat beside scaled Drakmor warriors while insectoid Thessians clicked their approval at shared jokes. In the corner, Booth, old merchant Voss, swirled his drink and watched the younger traders with tired eyes. "Tell us about the humans again," said Kira, a young Zephyrian whose golden skin shimmered with curiosity. She had heard fragments of stories, but never the full tale. Voss chuckled, a sound like grinding stone. "Humans, child, they were never real. Just stories spacers tell to frighten new recruits." But the archives mention them," insisted Tam, a Thessian whose compound eyes glittered. "The Galactic Council has records." "Records of myths," Voss replied, but his expression grew distant. "Though I suppose every myth has some truth buried in it." The cantina grew quieter as other patrons leaned in. Human stories were rare entertainment, and Voss was one of the few beings old enough to remember when they were more than legends. "They came from Sol?" Voss began, his voice taking on the rhythm of an old storyteller. "A yellow star system that most maps don't even show anymore. Their homeworld was a nightmare by civilized standards. Extreme weather, deadly radiation, poisonous atmosphere, and creatures that could kill you in 1,000 different ways." "Sounds like a typical deathworld," Kira said. "No, child. Deathworlds are barren. Earth was alive and everything on it was trying to kill everything else. The humans didn't just survive there, they thrived. They turned their predators into pets, their poisons into medicine, their harsh environment into a training ground." Tam's antennae twitched with interest. "What did they look like?" "Like us mostly. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But they were built different. Dense bones, redundant organs, incredible healing abilities. I heard they could lose an entire limb and still fight. Their blood could clot in seconds, their immune systems could adapt to new diseases in real time." "You speak as if you met them," observed an elderly Altarian from across the cantina. Her pale blue skin marked her as old enough to remember the first galactic wars. Voss nodded slowly. "I did once on a trading run to the Kepler system about 320 years ago. They had just made contact with the Confederation, and everyone was curious about the new species." The cantina had gone completely silent now. Even the automated servers seemed to pause in their work. The human delegation was led by a female named Ruth. She was small by their standards. But when she walked into the conference room, every warrior present felt their instincts scream danger. She moved like a predator, but her eyes were kind. It was the strangest combination. "What happened to them?" Kira asked softly. "Nobody knows for certain. They expanded fast, faster than any species we'd ever seen. Within 50 years, they had colonies in 12 systems. They made allies with species we considered primitive, formed trade partnerships with enemies, and somehow convinced the Drakmor to sign peace treaties." A Drakmor warrior at the bar snorted. "My people bow to no one. Your people did then," Voss said calmly. "The humans didn't threaten or conquer. They simply offered solutions to problems we'd been fighting about for centuries. Food shortages, resource conflicts, territory disputes. They had answers for everything." "Then what happened?" Tam pressed. "They vanished. All at once, like someone had thrown a switch. Their colonies went dark, their ships stopped appearing at trade stations, their diplomatic missions were recalled. The Sol system became a dead zone. No signals, no responses, nothing." "They must have destroyed themselves," suggested a young Trillian merchant. "Aggressive species always do." The old Altarian spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of telepathic knowledge. "My grandmother was a council telepath during first contact. She said the humans were hiding something, even then. Their minds were shielded in ways we'd never encountered. They thought in layers, plans within plans within plans." "What kind of plans?" Kira asked. "The kind that takes centuries to unfold," the Altarian replied. "My grandmother said they studied everything. Every species, every conflict, every treaty. They were learning how the galaxy worked, not just how to survive in it." Voss drained his drink and stood up. "Maybe they found what they were looking for. Maybe they realized the galaxy wasn't worth staying in. Or maybe, the Altarian said quietly, they're still here and we just don't know it. The cantina erupted in nervous laughter, but it felt forced. The idea that humans might still be among them, hidden and watching, was both thrilling and terrifying. As the crowd dispersed, Kira found herself thinking about the human stories. 300 years was a long time for myths to survive unchanged. Usually legends grew more fantastic with each telling, but the human stories remained oddly consistent. Every species had the same basic details: their incredible adaptability, their strange kindness toward primitive species, their sudden disappearance later. That night, alone in her quarters, Kira accessed the Confederation archives. The human entries were frustratingly brief, but they confirmed the basic facts. First contact in 2087, rapid expansion, unprecedented diplomatic success, then silence in 2134. The files contained images of human delegates, and she studied their faces carefully. They looked so ordinary. Not the monsters or gods the stories sometimes made them out to be, just another bipedal species with their own quirks and characteristics. But there was something in their eyes, a depth that suggested they were always thinking, always planning, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The more she read, the more questions arose. Why had they been so interested in primitive species? Why had they established trade routes to systems that seemed to have no strategic value? Why had their colonies been located in seemingly random patterns across the galaxy? Unless the pattern wasn't random at all. Unless they had been building something, preparing for something, waiting for something. Kira fell asleep with human faces in her mind, and dreamed of yellow stars and hidden watchers in the dark between worlds. In her dreams, the humans hadn't vanished at all. They had simply learned to become invisible, and they were still out there, patient as death, waiting for the right moment to return. The next morning brought news that would change everything. A routine survey mission to the Outer Rim had discovered something impossible: a thriving colony of primitives who possessed technology that defied their apparent development level. The colony was called Haven, and its people claimed to have been guided by teachers who came from the stars, teachers who looked remarkably like the humans of legend. The survey ship Harmony drifted through the asteroid field surrounding Haven like a metal whale navigating through floating rocks. Commander Nara pressed her scaled palm against the viewport and watched the planet grow larger with each passing moment. The initial reports had been promising but vague, describing a species that showed unusual technological advancement despite primitive social structures. Atmospheric readings are stable, reported her science officer, a young Vestan named Quinn, whose wings buzzed with nervous energy. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, suitable for most Confederation species without breathing apparatus. Nara nodded, though something about the readings troubled her. The atmosphere was too perfect, too carefully balanced. Natural worlds rarely had such ideal conditions for multiple species. Any signs of terraforming? Negative, Commander. All scans indicate natural development, but the ecosystem is remarkably stable. No signs of pollution, resource depletion, or environmental degradation. That was another oddity. Every developing species went through phases of environmental damage as they learned to manage their resources. The Trillions had poisoned 3-star systems before learning sustainable practices. The Drakmor had strip-mined their moon before discovering recycling. Yet Haven showed no signs of such mistakes. Incoming transmission from the surface, announced the communications officer. They're using a standard Confederation diplomatic frequency. Nara frowned. How did a primitive species know Confederation protocols? Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was warm and distinctly organic, unlike the mechanical translations most species required. Greetings, visitors. From the stars, this is Elder Tobias of Haven Colony. We welcome you to our world and invite you to visit our settlement. The words were spoken in perfect Confederation standard, with no accent or grammatical errors. Nara exchanged glances with her crew. Primitive species usually required weeks of linguistic analysis before basic communication was possible. Elder Tobias, this is Commander Nara of the survey vessel Harmony. We accept your invitation and request permission to establish a diplomatic landing. Permission granted, Commander. We have prepared a landing zone at coordinates that should appear on your navigation systems now. The coordinates appeared instantly on their screens, formatted exactly as Confederation protocols required. Nara's unease grew stronger. 2 hours. Later, she stood in the main settlement of Haven and tried to understand what she was seeing. The buildings were constructed from local materials but showed architectural principles that shouldn't exist in a primitive society. The streets were laid out in efficient patterns that maximized airflow and sunlight. The inhabitants moved with purpose and apparent contentment. Elder Tobias approached them with a smile that seemed genuine. He was humanoid, but clearly not from any known Confederation species. His skin had a golden tint, his eyes were larger than standard, and his movements suggested both strength and grace. "Welcome to Haven," he said, gesturing to the settlement around them. "We hope you find our world interesting." "We do," Nara replied carefully. "Your people seem remarkably advanced for a recently discovered species." Tobias's smile widened. "We have had good teachers." "Teachers? From where? From the stars, like yourselves?" "Though they came much longer ago." Nara felt her pulse quicken. "What species were these teachers?" "They called themselves humans," Tobias said simply. "Perhaps you know of them?" The word hit Nara like a physical blow. She had heard the stories, the myths, the legends. Every spacer knew about the humans who had vanished 3 centuries ago. But myths didn't build settlements or teach primitive species advanced construction techniques. "Humans are extinct," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Are they?" Tobias asked gently. "Come, let me show you something." He led them to a building that served as both museum and archive. Inside, carefully preserved, were artifacts that made Nara's blood run cold. Human tools, human artwork, human writing. But more than that, there were detailed records of human-Havanite interactions spanning 2 centuries. "They arrived when our people were dying," Tobias explained, running his hand over a display case containing what looked like human medical equipment. "Disease had claimed most of our population. Our crops were failing, our water sources were poisoned. We were perhaps a generation away from extinction. What did they do? They helped. Not by taking control or imposing their will, but by teaching us. They showed us how to purify our water, how to modify our crops for better nutrition, how to build structures that worked with our environment instead of against it." Nara stared at the artifacts. They were definitely human in origin, but they had been modified, improved, adapted for use by different species. How many humans were there? Never more than a few hundred at any time. They came in small groups, stayed for a few years, then moved on. But they always left teachers behind, volunteers who chose to remain and continue their work. Where are these teachers now? Tobias smiled and spread his arms wide. "All around you. We are no longer purely Havanite, Commander. Over the centuries, we have become something new. Some of us carry human genetic markers. Others carry their knowledge, their values, their way of thinking. We are their children in every sense that matters." The implications were staggering. If humans had been secretly working with primitive species for centuries, how many other worlds might have been influenced? How many other species might owe their survival to human intervention? "Why are you telling us this?" Nara asked. "Because it's time," Tobias replied. "The galaxy is changing. Old threats are stirring. The humans have been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries, and now they need the galaxy to know the truth." "What truth?" "That they never left. They simply learned to work differently. Every species has its own path to development, its own strengths and weaknesses. The humans discovered that forcing change never works, but guiding it, nurturing it, protecting it from a distance, that can transform entire civilizations." Nara's mind raced. "You're saying humans have been secretly influencing galactic development for 3 centuries? Influencing, helping, teaching, protecting. The Drakmor military reforms 20 years ago, human advisors? The Vestan breakthrough. In quantum communications, human technology. The Zephyrian Environmental Restoration Project, human methodology." "That's impossible." The Confederation would have detected such widespread involvement, would they? Humans are remarkably good at remaining unseen when they choose to be. They learn from their first contact experience that visible power creates resentment and resistance. Hidden influence creates genuine change. As they returned to the Harmony, Nara's crew was unusually quiet. The evidence they had gathered was conclusive but deeply disturbing. If Tobias was telling the truth, the entire balance of galactic power was built on a foundation of human manipulation. "Commander," Quinn said quietly, "if humans have been secretly guiding galactic development for 3 centuries, what does that make us?" Nara didn't have an answer. Were they independent species making their own choices, or were they all unknowing participants in some vast human experiment? The thought was both terrifying and oddly comforting. That night as the Harmony prepared to depart for Confederation space, Nara stood again at the viewport and watched Haven recede into the distance. Somewhere out there, humans were still alive, still working, still watching. The galaxy's greatest mystery wasn't where they had gone, but how they had managed to hide in plain sight for so long. The real question wasn't whether humans still existed, but what they were preparing for that required 3 centuries of careful preparation. Intelligence Agent Rex stood in the center of the Confederation's most secure data analysis chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing star charts, trade routes, and communication networks spanning the entire galaxy. 3 months had passed since the Haven discovery, and what had started as a simple investigation had become the most significant intelligence operation in galactic history. "Show me the pattern analysis," Rex commanded, his reptilian features betraying no emotion despite the magnitude of what they had uncovered. The central display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with thousands of highlighted systems. Each point of light represented a world where human influence had been detected. The pattern was breathtaking in its scope and terrifying in its implications. 67% of all inhabited systems show signs of human technological or cultural influence, reported Dr. Van, the Altarian xenorchaeologist who had been leading the research teams. The influence ranges from subtle educational programs to direct technological transfers. Rex studied the display carefully. The distribution wasn't random. The humans had focused on specific types of systems, those with developing species facing existential threats, strategically important worlds along major trade routes, and systems that controlled access to rare resources. "What about the Drakmor homeworld?" Rex asked. "Extensive influence," Van replied, manipulating the display to focus on the warrior species territory. Their greatest military leader, General Thax, was trained by human advisors using strategies derived from ancient Earth warfare. Their current defensive formations are based on human tactical principles adapted for their physiology. The Drakmor would never admit to accepting help from anyone. They don't know? The humans work through intermediaries, presenting their ideas as indigenous innovations. The Drakmor believe they developed these strategies themselves. Rex felt a chill run down his spine. The humans hadn't just held primitive species, they had manipulated advanced civilizations without their knowledge. What about the Deshan communication breakthrough? Human technology, definitely. We found the original research notes hidden in the Deshan archives. The breakthrough came after a series of anonymous data packets appeared in their research networks. The packets contained just enough information to guide their scientists toward the correct solution without revealing the source. And the Zephyrian environmental restoration? Same pattern. Human methodology introduced through a series of seemingly unrelated academic papers published by different researchers across multiple worlds. The Zephyrians assembled the pieces and believed they had developed the techniques independently. Rex walked to another display showing communication intercepts and travel records. "Have we identified any active human agents?" "That's where it gets interesting," Van said, her telepathic abilities allowing her to sense his growing unease. "We found evidence of humans living openly among dozens of species. They've been hiding in plain sight for centuries. How is that possible? Genetic modification, surgical alteration, and careful cultural integration. A human can be made to look like almost any humanoid species with the right medical procedures. They've been living among us, working with us, sometimes even leading. US, and we never knew. The implications were staggering. Rex thought about his own career, his colleagues, his superiors. How many of them might actually be human? How many decisions that had shaped galactic history had been made by human agents? There's more, Van continued. We've identified what appears to be a coordinated network. They call it the Foundation Protocol. It's a galaxy-wide system of human agents, sympathizers, and hybrid communities all working toward common goals. What goals? Stability, development, and preparation. Preparation for what? We don't know yet, but the evidence suggests they've been preparing for something specific. The pattern of their influence, the timing of their interventions, the resources they've been accumulating, it all points to a long-term plan. Rex studied the star charts more carefully. The human influence wasn't just widespread, it was strategic. They had positioned themselves to control key systems, influence major decisions, and guide the development of entire civilizations. Sir, interrupted one of the junior analysts, we're receiving priority communications from deep space monitoring stations. They're reporting massive energy signatures beyond the galactic rim. Rex felt his blood freeze. The timing couldn't be coincidental. What kind of energy signatures? Unknown configuration, but the power levels are off the charts. Whatever's out there, it's big enough to register on our sensors from outside the galaxy. How long before it reaches inhabited space? At current velocity, approximately 6 months. Rex stared at the display, pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place. The humans had been preparing for 3 centuries, guiding galactic development, strengthening potential allies and positioning themselves for some unknown threat. Now something was approaching from beyond the galaxy, and the humans had somehow known it was coming. Get me a direct communication to the Confederation Council, Rex ordered. Priority Alpha. Sir, what should I tell them? Tell them that the human myths are real, that they've been manipulating galactic development for 3 centuries, and that they were apparently preparing for something that's about to arrive. Within hours, emergency sessions were called across the galaxy. The revelation that humans not only still existed, but had been secretly influencing galactic civilization for centuries sent shockwaves through every major government. Some species felt betrayed, others felt grateful, and a few felt terrified. The Drakmor demanded immediate military action against human infiltrators. The Veshans wanted to negotiate with the human network. The Zephyrians simply wanted to understand why they had been helped. The Altarians, with their telepathic abilities, had suspected something for decades but had kept their suspicions to themselves. But as reports continued to arrive from the deep space monitoring stations, the debate about human deception became secondary to a more immediate concern. The energy signatures were getting stronger, and preliminary analysis suggested they belonged to ships. Lots of ships. Rex stood in his private office, looking out at the stars and trying to comprehend the scale of what they had discovered. Somewhere out there, humans were still alive, still working, still planning. They had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment, and now it was about to arrive. The question was no longer whether humans could be trusted, but whether the galaxy could survive without them. If the approaching fleet was hostile, the Confederation would need every advantage it could get. And the humans, with their 3 centuries of preparation and their network of influence throughout the galaxy, might be the only ones who knew how to fight what was coming. Rex made his decision. The galaxy needed to find the humans, not to punish them for their deception, but to beg for their help. Because if the energy signatures were any indication, the galaxy was about to face a threat that would require all the cunning, preparation, and hidden strength that humanity had spent 3 centuries developing. The humans had been preparing for war, and now the enemy was finally coming home. The massive observation deck of New Terra Station offered an unobstructed view of the galaxy's edge, where space itself seemed to end in an infinite wall of darkness. Admiral Stone stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the energy readings cascade across the displays that surrounded her. The approaching fleet was still months away, but its presence was already changing everything. "The Confederation fleet is being slaughtered," reported Captain Hayes, his voice tight with controlled emotion. 17 systems have gone dark in the past week. The Drakmor threw their entire war fleet at the advanced scouts and lost 60% of their ships. Stone nodded grimly. The Devourers had returned, and they were exactly as ruthless as the ancient records suggested. She had hoped that 3 centuries of preparation would give the galaxy a better chance, but the enemy had also been evolving during their long absence. "What about the evacuation protocols?" she asked. "Proceeding as planned. The Foundation Network is coordinating refugee movements from the outer systems. We estimate we can save about 40% of the population from the danger zones." "Only 40%? The Devourers are moving faster than our worst-case projections. Their ships are using some kind of spatial distortion technology that allows them to travel between systems in a matter of hours rather than days." Stone turned away from the viewport and walked to the central command station. Around her, the bridge of New Terra hummed with activity as thousands of human and hybrid operators coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history. But it wasn't enough. Even with 3 centuries of preparation, they were fighting an enemy that had also been evolving. "Sir, incoming message from the Confederation Council," announced Lieutenant Park, her enhanced cybernetic implants allowing her to process dozens of communication channels simultaneously. "They're requesting immediate assistance. Put it through." The holographic display shimmered to life, showing the assembled leaders of the Confederation. Stone recognized most of them from intelligence reports, but seeing them in person was different. They looked terrified, desperate, and utterly unprepared for what they were facing. "Admiral Stone," said Chancellor Vex, the Trillion leader whose normally composed demeanor had cracked under the pressure. "We need to speak with you immediately." "I'm listening, Chancellor." "The intelligence reports about human infiltration of our governments were correct. We've identified dozens of your agents in positions of authority throughout the Confederation. Under normal circumstances, this would be considered an act of war." Stone waited, knowing there was more. "These are not normal circumstances," Vex continued. "The entity approaching our space is beyond anything we can handle. Our best military analysts estimate that the Confederation fleet will be completely destroyed within 2 months. We need your help." "What kind of help?" "Everything. Your technology, your ships, your strategy, your soldiers. We know you've been preparing for this for 3 centuries. We're prepared to place the entire Confederation under human military authority, if necessary." Stone felt the weight of the moment. This was what they had been building toward, but it also meant the end of the careful balance they had maintained for 3 centuries. Once humanity revealed its true strength, the galaxy would never be the same. "Chancellor, I need you to understand something. The entity you're facing isn't just another hostile species. These are the Devourers, ancient machines that have been consuming galaxies for millions of years. They were here before, and it took the combined effort of every species in the galaxy to drive them away." "Are you saying we faced them before?" "Your ancestors did. The records were deliberately obscured to prevent panic, but the Devourers are the reason why so many ancient civilizations disappeared. They return every few 100,000 years to harvest whatever new life has developed." Chancellor Vex's expression grew even more grim. "How did the ancient civilizations defeat them?" "They didn't defeat them. They barely managed to make the cost of conquest higher than the value of the harvest. The Devourers withdrew to find easier targets, but they always return eventually." "So we're doomed?" "Not necessarily. We have advantages the ancient civilizations didn't have. We've had time to prepare, we've unified dozens of species under common leadership, and we've developed technologies specifically designed to counter Devourer tactics." Stone gestured to the displays around her, showing the massive fleet that was even now emerging from hidden bases throughout the galaxy. "But this will require sacrifices that your people may not be willing to make." "What kind of sacrifices?" "Complete military integration. Every ship, every soldier, every resource under unified human command. No independent actions, no political considerations, no species pride. We fight as one or we die as many. The Confederation. Leaders exchanged glances. They were being asked to surrender their independence to the very species that had been secretly manipulating them for centuries. You have 6 hours to decide, Stone said. After that, the Devourers will be close enough to detect our preparations, and the opportunity for coordination will be lost. The transmission ended, leaving Stone alone with her thoughts. 3 centuries of careful planning had led to this moment, but she had always hoped it would never come. Humanity had withdrawn from galactic politics precisely to avoid this kind of responsibility. Admiral, Hayes said quietly, the fleet status reports are coming in. We have over 12,000 ships ready for deployment, with more coming online every hour. Stone nodded. The human fleet had been built in secret, hidden in asteroid fields and nebulae, disguised as mining operations and research stations. Each ship was a marvel of engineering, incorporating technologies from dozens of species and refined through centuries of development. What about the special projects? The Genesis ships are ready. Each one carries a complete genetic library and terraforming capability. If we lose this battle, at least some life will survive to try again. Stone felt the weight of species extinction pressing down on her. The Devourers weren't just threatening the current galactic civilization, they were threatening the very concept of organic life. The machine entities saw biological existence as inefficient and sought to convert or destroy it wherever they found it. Sir, we're receiving reports from the Haven system, Lieutenant Park announced. Elder Tobias is requesting permission to join the fleet? Stone smiled grimly. The Havenites had been among the first to be openly contacted by humans, and they had proven to be natural allies. Tell him that civilian populations should evacuate to the core systems. He says they're not civilians anymore. They've spent the last 3 months converting their entire industrial capacity to military production. They want to fight. That was the humans' greatest achievement. Not the technology or the ships or the strategic planning, but the network of species that had chosen to stand together against the darkness. The Devourers had evolved, but so had the galaxy's defenders. Admiral, Hayes said urgently, we're getting reports of spatial distortions throughout the outer systems. The Devourers aren't just coming, they're already here. Stone turned back to the viewport and saw the first signs of the approaching storm. Stars were winking out as the Devourer fleet passed between them and New Terra, their massive forms blotting out entire sections of space. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All ships to battle stations. Send the activation codes to every Foundation cell in the galaxy. It's time to stop hiding. The moment had arrived. After 3 centuries of preparation, humanity was about to reveal its true strength. The galaxy would either stand united under human leadership, or it would fall to the machines that had been harvesting civilizations. Since before the first organic thoughts had evolved, Stone watched the darkness grow larger and knew that tomorrow would bring either the greatest victory in galactic history or the final extinction of organic life. But at least they would face it together, as one people, one purpose, one last hope against the endless night. The Kepler system had been beautiful once, with 3 inhabited worlds and a thriving trade network. Now it was a graveyard of twisted metal and dying light as the Devourer fleet consumed everything in its path. The massive mechanical entities moved through space like living cancer, their dark hulls absorbing starlight and converting matter into more of themselves. Commander, Lisa Park watched the destruction from the bridge of the Terran flagship Endurance, her hybrid physiology allowing her to process the overwhelming tactical data flowing through her neural implants. The human fleet had finally revealed itself, and the sight was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. All stations report ready, announced Captain Torres, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The Confederation remnants are in position behind our main battle line. Lisa nodded, though her attention was focused on the enemy formation. The Devourers had evolved since their last visit to the galaxy, their ships now incorporating technologies harvested from countless civilizations. But humans had evolved too, and they had spent 3 centuries learning to fight the impossible. Deploy the Genesis Protocol, she ordered. If we fail here, at least the next galaxy will have a chance. Across the fleet, specially modified ships began launching toward the galactic rim. Each one carried the genetic patterns and cultural knowledge of dozens of species designed to seed new civilizations if this one fell. It was humanity's final insurance policy against total extinction. Devourer fleet is adjusting course, reported the tactical officer. They're moving to intercept our advance units. Let them come, Lisa said grimly. Signal all ships. Execute Formation Delta. The human fleet transformed before her eyes, ships that had seemed separate revealing themselves as components of massive superstructures. The Endurance joined with 6 other vessels to form a battle platform the size of a small moon, its weapon systems capable of cracking planets. My God, whispered Chancellor Vex from the communication display. How long have you been building? This? 3 centuries, Lisa replied without looking away from the tactical displays. We've been preparing for this moment since the day we first learned the Devourers existed. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness between the stars. Human weapons, designed specifically to counter Devourer technology, tore through the enemy formation with devastating effect. But the machines adapted quickly, their hulls shifting and reforming to absorb the energy. They're learning our weapon signatures, Torres reported. Effectiveness is dropping by 15% per salvo. Then we teach them new lessons, Lisa sighed. Activate the hybrid protocols. Throughout the fleet, the true nature of humanity's 3-century project revealed itself. The ships weren't just human constructions. They were collaborative efforts incorporating the best technologies and tactical knowledge from every species in the galaxy. Drakmor weapon systems merged with Theshan shields, Zephyrian environmental controls, enhanced Altarian sensor networks, and human adaptability bound it all together. Sir, we're receiving combat data from the Foundation network, announced Lieutenant Hayes. Every human agent in the galaxy is providing real-time intelligence on Devourer movements. Lisa smiled grimly. The network that had been built to guide galactic development was now functioning as the largest intelligence operation in history. From the core worlds to the outer rim, human agents and their allies were coordinating the defense of civilization itself. Devourer command ship is moving to engage us directly, Torres reported. It's massive, sir. Bigger than anything in our projections? Lisa studied the tactical display. The Devourer command vessel was indeed enormous, easily 10 times the size of their largest battle platform. But size wasn't everything, and humans had learned to fight smart rather than hard. Signal the Havanites, she ordered. Tell them it's time. Across the battlefield, ships that had been hiding among the debris of destroyed worlds suddenly came alive. The Havanites had spent 3 months converting their entire civilization into a military force, and they had positioned themselves perfectly for this moment. Coordinated assault, all units, Lisa commanded. Show them what 3 centuries of preparation looks like. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy finally fought as one. Human strategies coordinated with Drakmor. Aggression, Theshan technology enhanced Zephyrian environmental warfare, and Altarian telepaths provided instant communication across the entire fleet, but the Devourers were not defenseless. Their weapons began adapting to human tactics. Their hulls started incorporating captured technology, and their numbers seemed endless. For every machine they destroyed, 2 more appeared from the darkness beyond the galaxy. We're losing ships. Faster than we can replace them, Torres reported. Even with the manufacturing platforms working at maximum capacity, we can't match their production rate. Lisa felt the weight of 3 centuries pressing down on her. All the preparation, all the sacrifice, all the careful planning, and they were still being overwhelmed. But then something caught her attention in the tactical display. The Devourer formation wasn't random, it was following patterns that seemed almost familiar. Computer, analyze Devourer tactical algorithms and compare with human strategic databases, she ordered. The results made her blood run cold. Torres, those aren't alien tactics. They're human tactics, evolved and perfected over thousands of years. That's impossible, sir, is it? What if the Devourers aren't aliens at all? What if they're what humanity becomes when it chooses the path of mechanical evolution instead of organic growth? The implications were staggering. If the Devourers were actually evolved humans from some distant timeline or parallel development, then they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove which vision of the future was correct. Sir, incoming transmission from the Devourer command ship, Hayes announced. They're requesting direct communication. Put it through. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a figure that was unmistakably human in origin but transformed beyond recognition. Cybernetic implants covered most of its body, its eyes glowed with artificial light, and its movements had the precise efficiency of a machine. "I am Architect Prime," the figure said, its voice carrying the weight of eons. "We have analyzed your fleet composition and tactical capabilities. You fight well for primitives, but you cannot win. We'll see." "About that," Lisa replied. "We know what you are now. You're us, aren't you? Humans who chose to abandon organic life? We are what humanity becomes when it embraces perfection. We have conquered death, eliminated suffering, and achieved unity of purpose. You cling to chaos, inefficiency, and the primitive drives of organic existence. We cling to what makes you as human," Lisa said firmly. "Growth, adaptation, the capacity to surprise ourselves and become something greater than the sum of our parts. And yet you are losing," Architect Prime observed. "Your organic allies are falling, your ships are being destroyed, and your civilization will soon join the countless others we have absorbed. Why do you resist the inevitable?" "Because the inevitable has a way of changing when humans are involved," Lisa said. She turned to Torres. "Initiate the Prometheus Protocol." Torres hesitated. "Sir, that's never been tested on this scale. The energy requirements alone could destroy half our fleet. Do it." Throughout the human fleet, ships began linking their power systems in ways that defied conventional engineering. The network that had connected human civilization for 3 centuries suddenly became a weapon of unimaginable power. Every human ship, every hybrid vessel, every Foundation base across the galaxy began feeding energy into a single massive construct. "What are you doing?" Architect Prime demanded, its mechanical calm finally showing cracks. "Something you can't," Lisa replied. "We're trusting each other completely." The Prometheus Protocol transformed the human fleet into something that had never existed before, a single organism composed of thousands of ships and millions of beings all acting with perfect coordination. The energy discharge that followed was visible from neighboring galaxies, a burst of pure creation that rewrote the laws of physics in the immediate area. When the light faded, the Devourer fleet was gone. Not destroyed, but transformed. The same energy that had linked the human ships had reached out and restored the organic components that the Devourers had discarded eons ago. They were still mechanical, but they were also alive again, conscious, individual. Architect Prime stared at its own hands as organic tissue began growing through the cybernetic components. "This is impossible. We purged all biological weakness from our systems." "You purged the part of yourself that made evolution possible," Lisa said gently. "Without organic chaos, you became stagnant. Perfect, but unable to grow beyond your programming." Across the battlefield, former Devourer ships were powering down their weapons as their crews rediscovered emotions, creativity, and the capacity for change that they had sacrificed in their pursuit of perfection. "The war is over," Lisa announced. "To the galaxy? Not because we won or lost, but because we remembered that the future belongs to those who can grow, change, and surprise themselves." In the days that followed, the galaxy began the long process of rebuilding. The human fleet, no longer hidden, established protectorates throughout inhabited space. The Devourers, restored to organic consciousness, began the difficult process of relearning what it meant to be alive. The Confederation was dissolved and replaced with the Terran Protectorate, a new form of government that openly acknowledged human leadership while respecting the autonomy of member species. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive, growing, and capable of adapting to whatever challenges the future might bring. Lisa stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, now openly broadcasting its location to the galaxy, and watched as human ships moved freely between the stars for the first time in 3 centuries. The age of hiding was over, and the age of open cooperation had begun. The stars were no longer dark, blocked out by warships, but they now shone under humanity's protection. And somewhere in the vast network of civilizations they had helped nurture, new species were evolving, new ideas were forming, and new possibilities were being born. The humans had finally come home, not as conquerors or saviors, but as the galaxy's gardeners, helping life grow in all its infinite variety. The greatest victory wasn't the defeat of the devourers, but the proof that organic life, with all its chaos and inefficiency, was still the universe's greatest source of hope.